Hi, I'm John Bonk, and this is my stepping story. I wanted to share something with you that happened when I was younger. I got married at 22, and my wife was only 18, and so we were really young. Several years later into the marriage, we had 3 children, 4, 5, and 6 at the time. And I was living in San Fernando Valley, which is northeast of Los Angeles. We had 2 close friends as well that also had young children, Victor and Robert. And Victor was my best friend. I'll tell you why in a moment. Between the 3 families, we had 8 children under 8 years old. So you can imagine how crazy it was when we all got together. We all went to the same church, we all lived in the same apartment complex, and Victor even worked where I worked. Well, one day, Victor and I were at work, we just got back from lunch, and I got a phone call from a Catholic nun. And I thought that was really strange. Found out that Sandy, my wife, was in a terrible accident. She was in a head-on collision, and the paramedics had to use the jaws of life, and they airlifted her to a trauma center. And so Victor and I rushed over to emergency, and the nun was there to meet us, and she took us into a room. And she said that she probably wasn't going to survive, and they were waiting for the neurological doctor to arrive. So I begged the Catholic nun if we could see her before surgery, and after getting director approval, they allowed us to do that. So I walked into her room, and she was laying there on a stainless steel table. She still had the same clothes on. She had some blood on her. And we prayed over her like you wouldn't believe, and that was the hardest prayer I had to do. But looking back on it, it was a special moment because not only did I have a one-on-one with her, but my best friend was with me. And so she was quickly taken to surgery, and I had my pastor came and my friends and family, and I was there all night. And so the next day I came home and I met with my children. I had to tell them what happened, and they were 4, 5, and 6 at the time. First thing my 5-year-old son told me was to make him a grilled cheese sandwich. Well, I walked over to the kitchen, and that's when it all hit me. I fell apart because I didn't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich the way he liked it. And so that was the start of a long journey. Sandy stayed in ICU for 30 days in a coma. And the surgeons would never give me a prognosis whether she was going to get better or worse. And so eventually they stepped her down to a hospital room. And I sat with her one day, and she opened her eyes. And I was so excited. But she looked at me, but I soon realized she didn't recognize me. And so at that point, she was in a vegetative state. And again, the doctors didn't have any good prognosis for her. So there were times when I spent time with her, I felt she could hear me, so I would definitely talk to her all the time. Well, days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and she was transferred to a neurological center. And the case manager assigned to me was wonderful because she was able to get her to stay twice as long as the insurance policy would allow. And I knew that was God answering our prayers. Christmas time, the pastor, well, the church was great and they bought a lot of toys for the kids. But the pastor came over Christmas Eve dressed as Santa, and he brought those toys in late at night, and I woke up the kids so they could quietly watch Santa bringing the toys. Well, those weeks turned into months, and she was again stepped down to a skilled nursing center. And what was so difficult for me was she was living between heaven and earth. She wasn't living in either side. And so the grieving process couldn't start for anybody. 2.5 years later, she passed, and she was with the Lord. I was at peace because she was no longer in pain. Let me share a couple of quick moments, God moments that I experienced. A month before the accident, I was driving with Sandy and the kids, and they were building a park nearby. And I was really excited because LA doesn't have a lot of parks. And so I was really excited they were going to have playground. But Sandy made a very strange comment to me. She turned and looked at me and she said, "I will never see that park when it's finished." And I didn't know what she meant by that until a month later. Another experience is a year after the accident, as I was at my lowest low. Darkness surrounded me emotionally. I blamed myself for what happened. I was overwhelmed by the responsibilities and exhausted all the time. At my darkest moment at that point, my friend Victor called me right out of the blue, and he asked if I was okay. And he could tell by my tone I wasn't He quickly dropped everything. He was living 45 minutes away at that point, and he came over to be with me. And I knew again that God was watching over me. One last story. Several years after Sandy passed, my best friend Victor, who was in great health, all of a sudden all of his organs started to fail him, and within 48 hours he passed. And 6 months after that, my other friend Robert in our family, the three of us, he pulled over off our freeway and he was hit by a car and he was killed instantly. So the three closest families that we had together, all of them lost a parent. And I realized at that point that Sandy had friends in heaven. So for me, one thing I learned about grief is that when you lose the loved one, not only do you lose that person, but sometimes you lose the closeness of your family and friends as well. And what I mean by that is that because they're grieving and also in a way, they don't know how to act around you. And sometimes they avoid you because they're unsure how to respond. So I would say that if someone is going through grief, just be present. Love them as they are, help them live a normal life as possible. And if that person needs love and support from you, you'll know, because the Spirit will tell you, just like Victor did in my experience. Finally, I will say that I know Sandy is smiling down on the kids. She left a legacy. Although I have 4 children now, those 3 children that we had together ended up having 11 children of their own, and a 12th is on the way in a few months. Sandy's lives on through them, and judging from what happened, she's going to live a long, long time.